Hi, everyone. Super excited to share this project I've been working on. It's been something I'm working on and off for a while, but I've really just been hammering out the nitty gritty the last little bit. So it's called Dashhost. Dash being our little character in Flutter, the little bird, and host because this is for hosting your Flutter web apps. What's different is there is a lot of really cool functionality under here, including some stuff for SEO, which is always something that people in Flutterland, Flutter Webland, are complaining about. So this is the landing page, work in progress, just kind of showing it off. We're going to have this little video here or right here, I think, watch video, and you get to watch this awesome video. This isn't the real video, but I hope you're watching it now and enjoying what I have to share. And a little bit about the functionality, like this is a sort of like CI/CD tool as well. So committing things to a specific branch will automatically deploy the updates for you. And then we have this thing called magic routes, which I'm going to definitely dig into. It's kind of the key reason this even exists, and I'll explain that a bit when we get to it. And there's stuff for theming your apps and various other cool things. Pricing is still being figured out. I plan on actually launching this kind of like early access free to, sort of like invited people or people who request invite, because I'm not quite ready to put a price on this yet. I want to kind of learn, from my user base. And yeah, so what is this or how does this work? So we'll go to the actual app itself. The front end of the app, for those interested, is built in Flutter Web, and the backend is built in Python and Django. So we're going to sign in here with GitHub. Currently, I'm just allowing GitHub because ultimately you will still need a GitHub account to use this. So to me, it's not really a barrier to entry. And for MVP purposes, I'm trying to keep this, pretty simple and minimal, and not add every login option ever. But it would be pretty trivial to add Google, which would be the next one I would obviously do. So here I am. I can see my projects, and one of my projects is just called Dashhost app. And actually, what we're looking at right now is a Flutter app, the Dashhost dashboard, which is actually hosted within the Dashhost ecosystem. So it's kind of cool because when I make changes to the front end code and push it, it's actually updating through my own system and hosting it there. I want to do that for multiple reasons. One, I think that's just a cool sort of thing as a good selling point. Like, we trust it. The thing you're using is essentially built within this ecosystem. And secondly, because it just allows me to have a real production app in Dashhost to be able to find and explore and learn from a user's perspective, what works, what could be better. And I have added a lot of functionality that I'm like, oh, this is annoying. I want to, do this differently. So let's just take a look at this app here. And if we go here, we can see, stuff about the app. We can see its deployment URL is my.dashhost.app. So it's like my Dashhost. Cool. We can, of course, see the deployments. So you can see all of them in here that have happened. And we can see this thing called magic routes, which we're going to show when I actually connect a more relevant app for that. We'll go here and we can edit the project. So we have settings, what's the name of it? What version of Flutter does this use? Because we want to make sure our build tool is in sync with what version you built in. And I'm using FVM on the back for that. That way we can easily have multiple versions. We have a locale. This is really just to inject metadata into your sort of like SEO and stuff to say this is the language. So you got all your, typical languages here. And you can choose whether WASM is enabled or not, so that it can build with that flag. For SEO stuff, this part's really basic. This isn't anything special. You could do this yourself, right? This is really just customizing sort of the default, title and description and keywords, and even like an image that you might want to use for your, when someone shares to a platform that, picks up images. Nothing super special here, but this is kind of like your fallback override, essentially, when you haven't set a custom one for a specific route, which will make more sense in a bit. We have some stuff for theme, your fav icon in case you just want to do it through Dashhost instead of, through your own code base. Same with the background color and theme color. Cool. Environment variables lets you set essentially your build settings. So vars that you can pick up as constants. within your application as compile time constants. Nothing here is secure because this is environment variables for my front-end application. The reason I'm mentioning that is, I'm obviously showing some environment variables, and it might sound scary to people, but these are the kind of things you would have just in your client-side code for a different flavor, essentially. Like you might have one pointed to staging, one to QA, one to production, and this allows you essentially, even in Dashhost, to have multiple instances from different branches of your app and configure them to work with different servers or different APIs and all that kind of stuff. So that's environment variables. Domains we'll go through when we do this test. The thing is, everyone gets a free domain in a sense. Basically, based on your project slug, you will have that slug dot dashhost.app. And I actually didn't have to add a custom domain here because of that wildcard that I've set up. My.dashhost.app will work as long as I made the slug my, which as the administrator of this project, I have the power to do. And then there's some advanced settings. You can choose whether to, run the build runner package, at the start, which, may or may not be needed, even if you're using a code runner. For instance, if you're not actually version controlling your generated code, you would need to run this. If you are, you wouldn't necessarily have to. I have one for localization because this is a common thing you want to do during your build. And the expectation here is, as I start working with people and people using this, they might be, hey, I really want to run this command. And for the time being, just for DevOps reasons, I'm not really allowing you just to type in any command you could want due to security issues. In the future, I have a plan for that on actually kind of running each of these builds through a complete isolated virtual environment so that it can't really damage any of my infrastructure. But for now, it's, we're just going to have a list of these sorts of things, and I can add them very easily through our backend. So cool, we'll configure that, and it hosts the Flutter app. Now what's cool is, I'll just show some stuff from a technical point of view. If we view the source of this stuff here, we'll see Flutter.js is actually everything's being hosted on an S3 bucket. And I do have plans in sort of version 1.1 to also add CloudFront so that it's even more, even better than an S3 because it can actually be distributed globally. So that's something I plan to do. So all assets are uploaded that way. Even your, if you uploaded a favicon or whatever, it's all hosted there. So the server itself isn't really, getting pinged a whole bunch by downloading this sort of static content. So we're doing that, which, just kind of makes sense, makes everything really fast. So let's actually go and add a project here. We'll go here. And I've already connected a few of these, but the idea would be you would, do your GitHub connect here by choosing essentially what app you want to use and so on and so forth. And this allows the user to only select certain repositories. They could of course choose all repositories, but I think most people would want to choose just the ones that make sense to work with this platform. So we would do that, and then essentially be brought back here after connecting and see all of them. And we will choose Dashhost example. We'll choose the main branch, which is just the default branch based on the Git repository. You can, of course, change it to whatever you want. And now we have Dashhost example. We're going to do 3.22.1. And let's do Dashhost example app. We'll spell the company right. Dashhost hello world. This can, of course, be changed at any time. And from here, although I am planning on doing a little more of a walkthrough to get users to maybe put in environment variables and build settings and all that kind of stuff, I'm just going to click deploy now, and we'll see this go. We can actually see a deployment happening. So I can click this and I can see and just kind of watch the logs as they go. So right now it's in the building phase, and it's got its dependencies from I guess a pub get, and over time, this will fill out, okay, downloading material fonts, all the normal stuff you would see and more. So we'll let this go, and we'll come back in a moment once this build is complete. All right, so the deployment has completed. we'll go back here and we'll actually see there's now a deployment URL. So this is kind of that, based on my slug, which is auto-generated based on the repo name, I automatically get sort of this, free subdomain essentially. And this is the example app. It's really just I think a good test for this thing. It's using the Rick and Morty API to really just have a list view of all the characters and then a detail view of them. Nothing crazy here. It's just it's basically a vanilla Flutter app. I'll put a link to it in the source code. The only package I think being used is Go Router and HTTP, because an important thing about web apps is, of course, that it's using some kind of routing strategy to change the URL. And that's really what we're trying to solve here, is what happens when someone shares this link. And currently, if I was to share this, it would just be pulling, my standard index.html, right? Which, if we look at this here, is just going to be, Dashhost example app, some empty keywords. It doesn't really have context at all to this page. But this is what Dashhost is addressing, and how do we fix that? So let's first of all look at the API that this is using. And of course, this is just an example API, and we've built Dashhost in a way that it can essentially work with any, RESTful API, whether it's your own or, a weather third-party app, anything. So let's just take a look at the network requests of what's actually happening from the Flutter app. And we'll just go to XHR and we'll see it's calling essentially this thing called rickandmortyapi.com/API/character/7. I realize actually the URL in my screen recording I don't think is showing up. I have this kind of shrunken down just to show the browser, but it's going to this link here. If you can see this, yay! It's going right here, and this is the data that's coming back. And let's just enable pretty print so we can see it. So cool, that's great. Now, how can we make Dashhost essentially work for us? So we'll go here and we're going to go and see this thing called magic routes, and we're going to create a new magic route. And let's start with a very simple one. So this app actually has an about screen. So the URL is /about. And if I bring this down just a bit, it's probably in the field of view now. So it's /about. And again, if I view the source, obviously this is a Flutter app. It's not, it's not even rendering to a DOM. It's like a canvas. There's no way for, even if Google was crawling this, to be able to, figure out what this actually says in a reasonable manner. So let's actually fix that. So we're going to do /about. As one of our magic routes. It'll be of type static route because there's nothing dynamic about this. There's not like a variable in the URL. And what we can do is give it a title. We can call it like Dashhost about. And in fact, I can actually just make it say about, and we have these different title strategies. We can prepend, this title to it. We can append or actually override it. So this is the title that would show up in the URL bar and that kind of stuff. And for this text, I should have made this copy and pastable in the demo app, but I'm just going to write Rick and Morty about page, something like that. And we can also give it some keywords, Dashhost, about, whatever. And I can even override, the image that would be shown on this page. So let's try that. And I'll just pick something like this. And we have this cool image cropper that will actually give it, the proper size for a shareable graphic. So we'll do that. We'll save. We will save this page. And we have that now. So let's actually look at our about page. And let's actually view the source of it. And we see now here it says Dashhost example app and then about. So that's sort of the thing we actually sort of overrode in that. We also have these keywords being put in here. We have the overridden title and, the site name, all these, kind of things in that description. So that was specific to that route, and that's pretty cool. And you notice I didn't have to do another deploy for that. That actually just happens on the fly when it's served at serve time, not at build time. So just a nice advantage. You don't have to go through a whole build process and wait for all your code generators to get a new magic route. Let's create another one. So this one, like I said before, we're going to essentially use, we're going to look at our route of here, which, sorry, not of here, but we'll go to our app. Let's just look at what the routing we did in our front end. So it's /character/ a number, an ID essentially. So we can do /character/ and for ID or whatever we want to call it, we just put a colon in front of it, just like you kind of do in something like Go Router or Auto Route. And we want to make this an API-driven route. So what we want to do now is for our API URL, we're going to use this rickandmortyapi.com/API/character, but instead of putting 7 in here, we're going to essentially put ID, basically make these two things, match. If your API, has some kind of authorization sort of stuff, you can put an API auth header and a value. We don't need that. And then what we want to do is tell Dashhost, hey, okay, when you get this data back, what should the title of the page be? And if we look at the thing right here, we're going to just use the name of the character. Okay, so that's what the title of the page want to be. We want to use that name value in our JSON. For description, this isn't the best one for it, but let's use type as a description. For keywords, let's just use gender, sure. And for our image key, we see there's a couple things here. Image. Oh yeah, we can just use image. Now, what's cool is if you have this one isn't, but say you had nested JSON, like we needed to go down a couple levels, like name.value.key.foo.bar, that will work. It does allow you to go deeper. It doesn't just have to be a top level value. So let's save that. So now we have the character/ID magic route here, and let's view source of our summer page and hope everything worked. So now we'll see the title was Summer Smith. She is, the keywords was female. And for the image, we will actually have, this sort of thing here. It's pulling from there, title and all that kind of stuff. So if I put this into like Facebook Debugger or any of those sort of tools, or even just message on Slack right now or Discord or whatever, it's going to pull that information. And what's kind of cool is we actually have a preview button here, so you can actually kind of test your thing without having to going through that process. So you just have to supply a thing for the ID. So let's do 7. I think that's what we were doing. And we'll actually, we weren't doing 7, but we'll actually get back like this is the image it's going to pull, this is the name, and this is, the description. We could do it again with like 33, and we'll see it's Bibu. There we go. Cool. Interesting. So Bibu didn't have whatever we were using for the description. So it actually fell back to our sort of default description. I actually hadn't tested that before, and there you go. So yeah, that's magic routes, and it's pretty cool. So this is really targeted towards, people that are making Flutter apps that are going to have a web component, especially with things that are user-generated content, a post page, a profile page, something like that with dynamic data that you want to make sure when someone shares that link, it actually pulls those things, on whatever, Slack, iMessage, Discord, Facebook, Twitter, all those kinds of things, as well as, what's going to happen if Google crawls that page. Now, I have lots of plans on top of this for the future, things like auto sitemap generators, submitting stuff to Google Sitemap dynamically so that people can have, a more SEO-rich project. But of course, I want to really get this out. So we're pretty close. To getting this live. I am excited, and hope you guys are too. Anyone at this point who is interested, send me an email. It's in my YouTube bio somewhere, and I'd be happy to bring you on when the time is right to essentially beta test and try it out. There's a few other features here we didn't get into, but more to come. Definitely send me a comment, send me an email. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you would use this. I know it's not for everyone. It's a very solving a very specific use case. Especially in the web world. Although a solution was needed for this even in things like React and Angular many years ago. Meta frameworks have come along that have been able to solve that and have the server-side rendering and whatnot, whether it be Next.js or SvelteKit. But there's nothing like that for Flutter, and frankly, there probably won't be a meta framework for Flutter for server-side rendering. You're better off just using something like Jasper to make a website. But there's definitely a need for this because people are, building public-facing apps that have dynamic content, and there's nothing that you can really do without a lot of custom work on something like Firebase functions or really building what we did with Dashhost in a more specific use case kind of way. So yeah, thanks for hanging out, and see you guys in the next one.